Yo, what is going on, NFL fans? Welcome back to the channel. We're going to kick this off with the Washington Commanders, who had the second pick in the NFL draft, and they took Jayden Daniels. He was one of my favorite players in this entire draft class. I actually like him a little bit better than Caleb Williams. He's a little more slender of a frame, so I think that's why Chicago went with Caleb Williams over Jayden Daniels. And Caleb Williams is just a little more accurate. He's a little bit more polished at this point in his career. But man, Jayden Daniels, that elusiveness, his ability to throw the deep ball is second to no one in this draft. Then they went with D-tackle Drazon Newton. They definitely had to address the defensive line. Chase Young got traded last year. So did Montez Sweat. So that D-line needed to be addressed. They needed some help. They got Johnny Newton, who's one of the best D tackles in this class. There's only two really good ones. He's one of them. He's a very good player. And the fact that they were able to get him in the second round is pretty awesome for the Commanders. I like what they did for the most part. Then they went Mike Sanastrilli from Michigan, the cornerback. He's not one of my favorite cornerbacks in this draft. Outside of the top maybe three, potentially four guys, I don't love a lot of the corners in this draft. 5'9", 182. Decent size. He's an okay player, but the Commanders really needed to address the defensive back position. They got a pretty decent corner in Mike Sanastrilli. And then they went tight end. They traded up to get Ben Sinnott from Kansas State. Before the draft, they had Zach Ertz penciled in as the number one tight end. He's aging. He's not the player he was 5-6 years ago with the Eagles. He's just not. Ben Sinnott is one of the best tight ends in this entire draft class. 6'4", 250 pounds. He's got good hands. He runs clean routes, and he's a pretty decent blocker too, in my opinion. I like this pick for the Commanders. They're really just banging out checkmarking all the holes they have on this roster. That's exactly how they drafted. They drafted for need in all these positions. Then they went Brandon Coleman. Brandon Coleman, he had a really good 2022. He regressed considerably in 2023. So I think they took a flyer on a guy who played well at some point in his college career and kind of regressed a little bit, and hopefully they can coach him up and get him back to where he was playing a few years ago. Then Luke McCaffrey, the wide receiver from Rice, very good player. I think you could always add wide receiver depth. This wide receiver class is very deep. In most drafts, a guy like Luke McCaffrey with his skill set would probably be a second-round pick, in my opinion. But there's so many amazing guys that got picked in the late first round, early second round, kind of push this crop of wide receivers back a little bit in the draft. Then Jordan McGee, the linebacker from Temple. He's one of the better linebackers in this class, and a pretty weak linebacker class. I like Jordan McGee. Good size, 6'1", 228. I want to see him add a little bit of weight. I want to see him around 240. With their last two picks, they went defense, man. They went safety and then edge with Dominique Hampton and Jean Baptista. I don't know if these guys are going to make the roster. A lot of these 5th, 6th, 7th round picks are competing for roster spots. They're going to be more special teams guys. I didn't see anything special about these two players. They're kind of just like depth roster guys that are going to be number 50, 51, 52 on the roster if they make the team. For the most part, I really liked what the Washington Commanders did in this draft, especially early. I might have went with a different cornerback than Mike Sanastrilli personally. He wasn't one of my favorite guys, but getting Ben Sinnott, Johnny Newton, and Jayden Daniels with their first 4 picks. Luke McCaffrey could be an interesting guy in the slot too. I'm going to go B+ for the Washington Commanders. I think there are some spots where they kind of overdrafted guys a little bit. We'll see how this draft class plays out. Ben Sinnott in the second round might be a little bit of a overdraft in my opinion. I don't know if he's worth a second round pick. There wasn't a ton of really good tight ends in this draft, so maybe that's why they overdrafted him. But B+ for the Commanders.